So don't say anything embarrassing because now it's in the zone. You can never.
Oh, oh man, I'm in now.
It's real. No backseas, no return.
I know.
It's like, did you ever see the movie Jumanji? Like, you have to play your way through.
I know. Now we're just doing it.
Oh my god, yeah, we're live! Friday Night Feels!
I'm so excited.
Welcome to Friday Night Feels! I think if I had another job, it would be like to be able to do this at night. Well, just like on a Friday, later night, I think it would be fun.
I'm excited.
Just even later that we do. So hello, everyone. I am Patrick Monette, licensed mental health counselor and certified life coach. And welcome to Friday Night Feels, which is a show that focuses on a variety of wellness-related issues, such as mental health, addiction, health concerns, stress management, anger management, relationships, and much more. The focus of the show is to create connection during difficult times and be able to talk about issues that affect all of us and how to be the healthiest versions that we can be. Each show, I invite a guest, co-host, or co-host to join me, and then we talk about people's questions and issues. Tonight, my amazing new guest is Courtney Whetsone from California. Welcome, Courtney, to Friday Night Feels. So, all right, everyone, listen up. This is big. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. This is Courtney's first show ever. So, ever. The bar has to be set because it can be either really good or not so good. So we're hoping for the best. So, Courtney and I were having a great conversation where we started, just that Friday night, end of the week type of tiredness and excitement. So Courtney, this is so exciting. Glad you're here. It's so nice to connect with you. So welcome to Friday Night Feels.
Thank you.
And Courtney, I just want to share a little background about her. She is in California, and her specialties as a therapist include working with children, adolescents, couples, and people in crisis intervention. She also runs a pregnancy and infant loss support group and a relationship boot camp and codependency support group. And you are in, I just wanted to clarify this, there are 2 offices and you're in one of them, correct?
Yes, so we have 2 offices in Southern California. One is in Riverside and one is in Marietta, and I am out of the Marietta office.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you basically run the show and they'd be lost without you.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And I think, I don't know, I think we should ask for a raise just because I feel like you deserve it. So if anyone's watching with power,
Courtney, so Jill, Sherry, if you're watching this,
it's like, come on, she's putting herself out there in the vulnerability. So I love this. Like I thought you had said that you were new to it, but this is brand new.
Oh, so new. This is actually, if you want even more for it.
I'm ready.
So this is my second speaking thing that I've ever done, ever.
I love it.
In my whole therapy career.
Isn't
first podcast, second speaking thing.
Okay, and it's on the internet, so there's no backseas or returns.
No.
It really, even if I could delete it, I don't know if I know how. So sorry.
It's better that you don't know how.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, if only there was some moments.
Just go.
Well, it's really interesting. I appreciate that you said this. So welcome, and I'm so excited that this is part of your journey. And I have the feeling it'll be, well, once you start doing it, it just sort of pops like popcorn, and then you enjoy it and you learn what you like and where to go and who to talk to. And every podcast is different. Mine's a little crazy out of the box, but I mean that's how we roll here at Friday Night Feels. So
good.
It's funny, I don't know about what's your degree exactly as a therapist?
So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay, so I'm a licensed mental health counselor and substance and one of the things that's interesting is, I don't know about your school, but they never talked about the fun stuff we get to do.
Oh, no.
It was gotta work for a clinic, save the world.
Totally. And I'm at a group private practice.
Okay.
And it's really interesting because I'm also a supervisor. Okay. And I tell the people I supervise all the the things that were taught and kind of programmed in school it's not always like that.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? It's just interesting kind of learning into, like, for example, self-disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
In school, that is such an absolute no, right? You
Right.
do
Right.
not do that.
Right.
But in working with clients, especially in grief, which is what I do with the pregnancy and infant loss,
Mm-hmm.
some of that self-disclosure is so important, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't tell you that.
Right.
Or like, for example, if I work with teens a lot who are like, oh man, like, I suck at school and I'm never going to amount to anything. And then I'll be like, I got 3 Fs my freshman year. I'm a therapist.
Right.
Like, it works. You know what I mean? So
There's hope.
self-disclosure can be really helpful to the client. And it's just, yeah, that whole thing of, we're not taught some of these things,
Right, right. And so in the last couple of years, I also became a certified life coach, which is a whole
Okay.
other really amazing journey in a different way to reach people and help people.
Mhm.
And it actually helped me heal some of those wounds
Mm.
that I think occur in therapy, of like the rigidity that some of us may have felt. I experienced something very similar to you about the self-disclosure, but it was also this expectation that you're supposed to be just carte blanche, that you're not supposed to really have a personality, that you're just really
Mhm.
supposed to be, try to make it as neutral for your client. But then it's like, how do you connect to your client if you can't be
Absolutely.
real? Especially as you're saying,
Absolutely.
teenagers and grief and loss are two examples. I also know we both work with couples, so we know you have to be real and present. And it's not, I think people get confused when we talk about self-disclosure. It's not about, hey, do you want to come over and have dinner in my house or show
Right.
me pictures of my selfie? It's
Right.
about, hey, I'm a real person.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, because um to me, this is what therapy should be.
Right.
It should be a conversation, not, hey, would you like me to do my CBT technique and all that? You know what I mean?
Yes.
We're having a conversation. This is exactly how I am. Yes, I make it relatable, and we're putting in techniques and doing all that. But the more genuine I am, that's what it is. It's not the stuffy, how does that make you feel? Nobody wants that.
Right.
They want someone who can relate to them and who can have a conversation with them. And that is what I do, which
Right.
is why I feel, because clients know. And I mean, I know that being on the other side of the couch, being a client, when your therapist or life coach or whomever is genuine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You
And
know what I mean?
I remember hearing from clients when they would have, worked in the clinic for a while, and they would say, well, that clinician is nice, but they're just book smart, they don't really have any
Yeah,
experience. And to have
absolutely.
clients like, okay, let's,
Yeah.
because they held themselves back,
Mhm.
and there was such fear, and how do we do this in a healthy way? And
Mhm.
I've taught classes undergrad and graduate school, and it's hard to even have that conversation because they almost don't believe you when I have, I've had classes like 40 or 60 students, and I try to tell them what the real world is like.
Mm,
It's almost like it hits Teflon,
mm,
because they've received so many messages of this is what it is. And then
mhm.
you run into them maybe years later, and they said, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah,
You heard the
absolutely.
good and the bad of,
Absolutely.
of what it is to be in this field, especially I think it, good or bad what's happened in the last 2 years. I think it's changed all of us in the helpers
Mhm.
fields, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what really led to me creating Friday Night Feels. Of there was
Mhm.
such a loss with the shutdown and the disconnect,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think as you get into more of the podcasting and presenting, you get to connect with people in such a different way
Mm,
that's healing and educational and fulfilling for yourself and others, that just enhances your therapy.
mhm.
So I'm so excited for this journey for you, and
Yeah, me
the
too.
people that you work with, because you're just going to grow.
Absolutely.
it,
Absolutely.
and being able to speak, I think, is really cool, because it makes you love what you do anymore, and then all of a sudden
Oh, yeah.
the stories come up, and
Yeah.
the healing, the tears, the joy, and then you can just share them with other people.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
I
I think it's really exciting, and it's different than what you think therapy or different ways to connect. It's different than what you think it might be.
Right.
I never would have thought this is a way to connect with people ever. And
Right.
obviously I've never done it before, but now it just gives me another chance to be who I am, speak about what I'm passionate about, speak out who I serve, and that will shine through. And I
Yeah.
just like the different ways of connecting with people.
Yeah, and I love that too. And so some of the areas that you focus on, I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah.
And it allows people to get to know us and our colleagues and to see what exists out there, because I think sometimes there is fear or hesitancy to reach out for couples work or
Oh yeah.
sending your kid to therapy. I believe that with COVID, it's really broken down a lot of stigma of reaching out for help, because so
Oh
many
yeah.
people have needed it,
Yeah.
which is great. But I think there are still so many stigmas and so many blockages that prevent people from reaching out for therapy or help or educational classes. And there's it's sad because they need the skills and then they could be better.
Definitely. Oh
I
yeah.
see that a lot. I know we talked about wanting to focus on perinatal loss, but I really wanted to hear a little bit more, if that's okay, on your couples boot camp.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about that.
So let's see. So I wanted to do that because it's different than just your typical couples therapy, right? So the way that it's broken down, so it's an 8-week sessions, if you will. And each session is focused on a different theme. So like finances, which is huge in couples, sex and intimacy, huge in couples, past relationships, huge, mental health, because I don't think that's talked about nearly enough, is you're bringing two individual people with two different mental health concerns, right? So maybe one person has bipolar, one person has anxiety. What does that look like when you're combining that together? What support do they need? You might not know anything about bipolar, and then your partner has bipolar. What does that mean? How do I support them? So we talk about that. We talk about, of course, there's like a theme of boundaries and communication in the whole thing. Fair fighting rules, I statements, all of those things. What does that mean? We talk about children. We talk about, do we want kids? And we talk about, when do we want kids? How are we raising kids? We're talking about blending families. We're talking about all the things that are hard to talk about. We're talking about it. And what I like about it is it's in, like, each week has its own dedicated thing. So we're not jumping around. We're dedicating each week to this particular topic.
Oh, I love that.
So that's what I like about it, is that it's every week you're getting something to do. We're talking attachment styles, love language. I mean, we're getting in there.
Yes, yes.
Which is what I love about it.
Right. How long are the sessions?
It's going to be 2 hours. So
Okay.
it's 2 hours, 8 weeks.
Oh, I love that. In person, online, or combo, or?
So we're doing online right now. My goal is absolutely doing in person. I think we can absolutely do it online. I think it's going to still be great, but I definitely want to do it in person if and when we can.
Yeah, I'm an EFT therapist, and we have the program called Hold Me Tight, which is and I was just about to launch it and find like a hotel where they could go get a spa. Yes. Yeah. And then the Rona took over. Yeah. Yeah. So I ended up doing it online, and I love it, but I think with couples too, one of the things, and I don't know if this is an experience, having them get away is so powerful.
Yes, that's the ultimate goal, is to do exactly what you're talking about, like a retreat kind of thing.
Yes.
The big picture, again, we want to do it this way first and just play around with it, and then do like kind of like a whole weekend. So combining basically the 8 weeks into a weekend sort of thing.
Great.
So we're trying it this way. I mean, like you said, you kind of have to work with what you have and still make this something where they can invest in themselves and their relationship,
And those topics that you're covering are so important, and it's amazing. I don't how many couples don't talk about those things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, and I thought of, so how we kind of came about it is thinking of, you know, things in my relationship, things in other people's relationship, talking to people. If you were going to go to a boot camp, what would you want to hear?
Yes.
Put it down on the list, because that's who we're trying to reach. We're trying to reach like people, right? So what would you want to hear in this? Oh, well, this is what's going on for me, so I'd want to hear about this. Cool, put it down. Yeah, so I think it's like you said, it's just super important. People aren't talking about it.
Right. And some of them may not even think about it, because then when you fall in love and it's magical and it's rainbows and puppies, but then when your relationship is tested.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah. And
when
money. What do we know? We know
money.
people fight about money, sex, and mental health. That's what people are arguing about. And let's talk about it. And it is difficult and it's uncomfortable, but I feel that when you get practice of talking about those hard things, it does become a bit easier. You have to obviously get some of that vulnerability going a little bit, but the investment that you're making by having this uncomfortable conversation in order to have this healthy relationship is incredible. So important. Totally worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. How did it come into creation?
Just being interested in it, to be honest. I don't do anything I'm not really interested in, because I have to believe in it.
Yes, you have to feel the connection.
Everything that, like the same thing with the lost group, it has to be something that means something. And relationships, it's just a passion. So then, okay, so we have the idea of this is something that would be cool. Well, now what? Then the hard work comes, like, what do we do with it? What does that mean? So then creating the different weeks and, kind of putting it, but I think it was just an interest in it.
And I love the name, because it's something different. Talking about stigma, no couple wants to go to couples therapy.
No.
Because if I'm going to couples therapy, that means we're really, really bad. And, I'm sure you hear, like, they're going to take your side, or they're not going to take my side. They're going to love you. They're not going to want me. They're going to tell me what's wrong. Do you ever hear that you're like, all right, so how do I help you?
All the time. That's the main thing, is I don't want you to side. So I tell them, just like, really simply, just like this, that you are the couple, or you are the client, not you and you. You are the couple. You are the client. The couple is the client. And I think once they kind of hear that, it changes a little bit of the perspective. But everyone, it's scary going to couples therapy. They're going to find out our business. They don't know me. It's, similar to individual therapy on the, I don't want someone I know or someone who doesn't know me up in my business. And now it's, okay, we're going to be talking about some intimate things, usually, infidelities or, some tough stuff.
Well, and we can get into it in a minute. Loss. And how couples deal with loss is tremendous. And I think intimacy is such a big one, especially if there's trauma involved. Like you were saying, I love that you incorporate mental health. That's so inspiring, because what happens when you deal with someone who has PTSD? What do you do when someone has anxiety? And then what would happen if you have children and it's hereditary? That's amazing that you're creating this for people.
Oh, absolutely. And part of in the sex and intimacy, the week, it is talked about safety, emotional and physical safety, and the reasons why. And because it's not just, there's such a complexity, and intimacy doesn't have to equal sex, and what other things are intimate. It's just a whole piece of it, because you're right. those pieces are challenged a lot of times due to sexual trauma.
Right.
And so what does this look like in a healthy relationship? How do we still be intimate with our partner while having this trauma? We're talking about it.
Right. Right. And then when things happen that affect you, if there's a medical issue or something, or different stages of a relationship and sex drive changes, or you're exhausted from having kids, or you're in school, all these different things, and they don't have the platform, they don't have the skills to say, hey, I really miss you and love you. There's this elephant in our relationship we don't know how to talk about.
Yep. Absolutely.
And
so
I think that boot camp, oh my God, my ideas are just percolating of how you could do it, because like you could totally market this to like bridal showers and stuff, of saying, hey, you're getting married.
Yes, it's interesting because there was a bridal expo and I did go to it, and it was pretty interesting to, again, thinking of ways I never would have thought to. So I do a lot of marketing for Central Counseling Services, which is where I am. And I'm like, this is interesting. Like, let's go here. So it was definitely an interesting thing, because they're like, oh, mental health, we're doing catering and flowers and therapy.
Well, it's interesting. So I was raised in the Catholic Church, and they had, and I know they still have it, the pre-canon courses. And I don't know the details of it, but the sense was that if you were going to get married, you were to go through these classes. And it took me until I was an adult to really understand, oh, they're trying to help the couple. As a kid, you don't know what it is because you're not interested in marriage.
Yeah, of course.
But then as an adult, you realize, oh, we don't know a lot of things. Like, how do we know how to do this? We just see it on TV. We see it in movies. We see what our parents are. And like you're saying, some of those examples may not be healthy.
Oh, right. Or if you're watching it on TV, inaccurate.
Happily ever after is like the worst phrase ever.
Yep. As long as it can be all the problems you have, the most, horrible issues, but we fix it in 30 minutes. Unless it's a cliffhanger, then the next episode. So I'm like, wait, what? That's not real. What happened?
Right. And what's interesting too, that I like, it sounds like this group is really versatile for any couple of any background.
Oh yeah.
And very inclusive. And I just kind of say that because I think that's so important, because I've seen programs that aren't. And I think in our world, the more inclusive, the more welcoming, I mean, every couple of every background deserves that support.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the problems are still going on. So we need to bring it to everyone's attention. Right. Absolutely.
Right. So let's merge. So keep us posted.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. So I definitely will. Yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like this could be like replace like some of the trashy shows out there, which are about like relationships, but not realistic, healthy ones. So I'm seeing TV, movies, books.
Oh, wow. We're keeping you around.
I mean, I'm getting inspired. The muses are talking to me tonight.
Good. We love it.
But I think people need it. I think they look to the fantasy stuff.
Sure.
Of all these reality shows, but it's missing real love. It's missing how to have a healthy foundation, how to create a relationship, how to deal with conflict.
Yes, and that conflict does not have to equal screaming, shouting, slamming doors, and that happily ever after can be hard to get to, right?
Yes.
Like it's hard. Relationships, marriage, it is hard. It's hard work. But again, that doesn't mean it's not worth it. I mean, a lot of things that are hard are worth having, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what we're talking about. The fact that they're coming is a huge sign. The fact that they're here investing in their relationship, huge.
Yes. Because it is scary. Something's amiss in our relationship that I can't fix or heal. And now we need professional help. Right. And then another component I like is you're giving them a specific time frame, which I think decreases some of the anxiety of, how long are we going to couples therapy? It's like well, you've been together for 30 years. Can we like do the intake and then take it from there? Or
right.
You've been together for a year, but you've lived 6 lifetimes together. Like there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But saying, all right, we have 8 weeks, I think that decreases that, and then they know what to plan. And then they get to, I'm imagining they also get to see what areas they need to do the work in more than others, maybe.
Right. So then after the boot camp, it would be, if you need connection to, because it's not therapy in the boot camp, right? It's therapist led.
Yep.
It can be different states, right?
Oh, awesome.
So if they're in California, or if they're in Southern California, obviously we can connect them to a therapist in our office. If they're in Idaho, we can connect them to a therapist there who can, okay, we know that this is an area that we want to focus on. Okay, you take what you learn to that therapist in Idaho, and they can kind of help, tweak it with a treatment plan a little bit better.
That's awesome. That's really exciting. I love this. So let's delve a little bit into child loss, which I know it is, I feel like as soon as I said that, the energy just went down a little bit, but so maybe I didn't use the best wording, but it's a serious topic, but I think it's one of the ones I haven't actually seen a lot of people in all my time of podcasting that actually talk about this.
There's not a lot of people that talk about it anywhere.
Right. But it is so prevalent, and there's so much stigma and stereotype. And I'm involved with this amazing organization in my area called Healing Grace, which is a non-for-profit organization which helps family dealing with perinatal trauma for the first 2 years.
Okay.
And we're actually launching in March it's called I Don't Want to Talk About It, which is a group for male identifying or fathers or anyone that's inclusive who's dealing with a perinatal loss or trauma.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I've seen in my experience is in addition to the lack of conversation for the mothers and for the children is, the fathers are also getting lost.
Oh, absolutely.
So can you tell me a little bit of how this blends into your work and the role that it's come to have?
So how this came to be is I had a loss. I had an ectopic pregnancy last year. I had no idea what an ectopic pregnancy was. So what it is, for those who don't know, it's a viable pregnancy in your tubes. So in the wrong location.
Okay.
So your baby can't grow in your tubes. And so it's a really life-threatening or potentially life-threatening pregnancy because there's rupture or can be rupture, internal bleeding. It's a really scary thing. I had no idea. Luckily that didn't happen as far as rupture or anything like that. Tubes were okay, but really traumatizing. And there was no one to call me or, say anything after as far as, hey, are you okay? Like it happened so fast. And of course it all happened with COVID. So my partner couldn't be there with me in the room. And so it's like, there's no one calling and saying like, hey, Courtney, like you just went through this traumatizing thing. Are you okay?
Right.
So I did some research after that and realized obviously if I'm not the only one this is happening. So I'm looking and I'm seeing that there's not really a lot of conversation or support groups. I mean, there's some on Facebook, but which is great, but there isn't really a lot. So I'm like, yep, I need to do this. Now, mind you, I had no particular interest in it before. I didn't know there was a need. So now Jill Johnson Young, who is one of the owners of Central Counseling Services, she's like the grief guru. So I did a training with her regarding grief and then tailored it to this particular loss. And it's just been really helpful. We do talk about the fathers as well. Oh, cat is cat.
Mom,
Really
if I'm
interested.
still here.
Um, so it's, we talk about similar things with grief, things that aren't helpful to hear. We talk about a lot of course, their story. We talk about what do we talk about? Rituals, and we talk about what the identity is after. Are we a childless parent? What does that look like? The stigma that goes along with all of these things. People saying, oh, well, this just wasn't your time, or you can always try again, or those things that aren't helpful to hear. We talk about the relationship. So this does not have to doom your relationship. This does not have to break you up, because so many people think once you have a loss, you're broken up. And that isn't the case. And we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about just how to move forward with our grief, and I don't ever say move on, but I just say move forward. So things you can do to remember, all these different things, and anything you can think of. We have open discussions too.
Oh, I love what you just said, is moving forward, not moving on. That takes my breath away of, okay, that feels really compassionate.
Absolutely, because so many people, because we do end the group with a goodbye letter. Now that sounds really sad and scary and final, like I'm just, like casting my baby aside.
Right.
But really what it is, and what we talk about what grief is, it's just moving along with grief, because grief is not supposed to last forever. It's about moving forward, so that, I have a ring with my due date, what my baby's birthstone would be. So it's always there, but does it have to be this really, really sad thing? It doesn't. I could look at the ring and it could be a nice thing. And just, what does moving forward mean, as opposed to, like I said, moving on?
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you see in your experiences that contribute to this trauma on top of trauma, of people not knowing what to say, professionals included? And people, like, what are some other examples that you think you wish people would know better, or understand better, of, hey, this is contributing to the trauma, let's upgrade this?
I think letting some of the biggest things that I know that I've noticed and experienced is kind of like a hierarchy of loss. So if you're only 4, 5, 6 weeks along, versus if you were 7, 8, 9 months along, versus if you lost an infant.
Yes.
And you don't get to determine someone else's loss. You don't get to determine someone else's grief, or telling them, just get over it. It's been a year. You don't get to do that. You don't get to dictate to someone. So what I think, for people who want to support, let your family member, friend, be where they are. They're not looking for you to fix it. You can't fix it.
Right.
I can't fix it for them, being the facilitator of the group.
Right.
But it's not about that. It's giving them a place where they can just relate.
Right.
Loss in general, it's really hard unless you've been there. So in this group, what we talk about, even though there's different loss, everyone relates to this loss of a child.
Right.
And it's a way you don't have to explain, I'm still mourning. You don't have to explain that to these people. No one's going to tell you, just get over it. Maybe this wasn't your time. No one's going to tell you that, because they get it. And sharing your story with one another, and just sitting in that with them, super, super, super powerful.
Yes. Well, it's the image I get is it's like when you're being pulled under by the ocean with grief and someone saying, just stand up. And, having a group like that is saying, hey, we know you're under the water, grab our hand. Mm-hmm. And we won't let you be pulled under.
Absolutely. That's a great image. And that's exactly how I would describe it.
Right. And I haven't experienced infant loss, but I've experienced other loss in my life. And I know it's so excruciating because it floods you. And I love what you were saying of it's not about fixing, because there were so many, what I noticed in my experience, the people in my life were incredibly amazing, but they all took on different roles. There were some that were they let me vent. There were some that would, when I was able to, they would give me the education because they've experienced grief. So normalizing, Patrick, this is what it's like. This is what's happening. Because even if you're in this field, it doesn't matter. You lose everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All of your knowledge.
What's that?
Well, it's like, I want to kill someone. And it's like, I'm in pain. I don't care about coping skills. I don't care about being calm. It's excruciating. And then having the people who did what I found was, so I had all these amazing people. And then some of the people who were the doers, like they ordered food. They would, check your porch, there's food there. I'm dropping off a snack. I'm bringing flour. And that community, I don't know if I would have handled it without that. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine what it's like to go through a grief or loss and then be told, hurry up, buttercup, it's been this or that, or as you're saying, all of these harsh things of judgment and stigma that cut you even deeper when you're already down. And the other side too that I'm wondering, and I'm sure you see, is when people can't get pregnant or can't get children, for the plethora of reasons. And the triggers of going to the grocery store, or seeing someone else with kids, or seeing someone, oh, you weren't even trying and you got pregnant. And we've been trying, we've been doing it, we've been doing all these, we've been praying to everyone. And we can't, and that's a whole other loss too, I feel.
Absolutely. Infertility is definitely included. A lot of people will say, is infertility a loss? Sure. Every time your cycle starts again and there's no baby, absolutely, that's a loss. And people, again, that's hierarchy of loss.
Yes.
Well, how can you lose something you never had? All these things that are just not helpful and are frankly insensitive.
Yes. And I love that. I watched this TED Talk once where the presenter was saying, hard is hard. Your hard is hard. My heart is hard. Let's just support each other in our hard. In our hard situations. And the one thing that just popped in my head when you were saying about infertility related issues is the expectations that people have finances or the resources to medical doctors or attorneys or anyone that you might need of fostering, adopting, of all of these different things that we see in movies, and like, oh, you just call a doctor. It's like, if you're in an oppressed group, if you're stigmatized, if you're not, in this perfect category of, oh, you would be great parents, let's give you all of the support. Yeah. And that's another loss too, that people who are stigmatized are then stigmatized in a whole other way of affecting their ability to be the parents that they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And sorry, I just have so many questions. I got flabbergasted for a minute, because it's such a powerful topic, and I know it's heavy, and I know it's but I'm so excited that we're having this conversation, and hopefully being able to spread it out there of overcoming that stigma and that fear, and creating an environment where people can be in their grief and not have to. The one thing I was thinking you were saying is being in grief and not having to explain it to people.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like, here is the pamphlet, read up, 2022, learn a little about grief. This is what you
Yeah.
say, and this is what you don't say.
Yeah. I think if that's if that's the only message that can get through, I think that message is huge.
Yes.
Just because as someone who wants to support someone, we get it, and that's great. It's how to support them, because just saying, well, I'm being supportive, but what does that mean?
Right.
What does being supportive mean? You have to support them based on how they need and want support, not on how you might need and want support, because it might not be the same.
Right. And it changes and evolves as your needs change and evolve.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then, as you're saying, even if there's a trauma at birth, or it was just a difficult process, all of that, or if we're looking in, if there's postpartum depression
Yes.
or any of those issues, which is so scary and terrifying for people. And I don't feel, as a man, I know I grew up not knowing anything about it.
Mhm.
So if I were to, like it just, I just don't know, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't happen to us. And I'm
Absolutely.
just saying that
Right.
stereotypically. So then if I, was with a female partner or something, and that's going on, how would I even know what that is?
Right. And what does that look like in the relationship, which is why that's talked about. And when there's a loss, miscarriage, ectopic, what have you, the hormone levels are still all out of whack. A lot of mood disorders come about with that. And that's a difficult thing too. And it's also not really understood. Again, a lot of these things I'm doing research on as it's happening to me, because I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. I think there is just this, unfortunately, just lack of knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the one area too, if when I'm working with grief, is I try to hold that space, but I also incorporate the conversation of it's okay to be angry.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean you're not a person of faith. It doesn't mean, if you are, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're a bad anything. It's like you have to get the anger out, and you have to let yourself be angry so that healing can be there. Whether it's angry at the taxi driver, angry at your partner, angry at the administrating nurse, like whoever it is, being able to let yourself be upset, be angry, be scared, and give yourself that dignity.
Oh, absolutely. Let yourself feel the feelings.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is so terrifying for so many people. And I read this once, so it was the perfect description of why people struggle with difficult emotions, is because they believe they're going to last forever.
Oh no.
And I remember thinking, it's like, okay, yeah, I can think that. I've seen that in myself, of that, this is so bad, how am I going to get through it? But it's like the ocean wave, like you have to let it ride its natural course, and then it calms down.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you see perinatal loss and trauma in your couples play out?
Mostly just how to support what's going on, handling grief differently. That's a big one. Handling the questions together from other people. When are you going to try again? What does this look like? What are your options?
Right.
Or deciding between the two of you, do we want to try again? Do we want kids? Which, again, like we talked about in the boot camp, that is a piece of it. Do we want kids? So kind of talking about that, and just the biggest thing overall is this one event and what the grief looks like for both partners, because again, it's probably going to look differently. And how do I support you? How do you support me? How do we get support together as well as individually?
Right. And
so how do we navigate this?
Right. I love that, because there's also the expectation of how long do you grieve? Like, and you were talking a little bit about that a few minutes ago of this. All right, you have 6 months to grieve, or you have 3 months to grieve, right?
Mhm.
Okay, it's, when you lose with grief, I think in grad school we all hear the stages of grief,
Mhm.
which where it's like, okay, this isn't a stage of like, elevator here. It's
Right.
you lost someone that you love that's never going to go away,
Mhm.
but you are going to move forward and learn how to integrate it
Yes.
into your world.
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
it's it's interesting also when you look at it in a cultural way
Mm.
of different cultures of how they deal with grief.
Yes. Yes.
And I watched, I can't remember what it was, the Disney movie Coke. I can't remember what, with the little boy. I don't remember, but they talk all about like the beliefs of when someone passes,
Mm.
and they have like the memories of them, and it's part of the culture of like, we keep you alive even if you're not here.
Mm. Mhm.
And I always remember when I learned about growing up, learning about the Day of the Dead in Mexico and the belief that they had
Mm.
a seat at the table for their path. And I
Mm.
remember like growing up as a little kid, thought that is the coolest thing,
Mm.
that you still get to love, that, that love doesn't die just because
Mm.
they're not here.
Mhm. Mhm. Part of the group also, which is an interesting piece of that, is how to tell your living children about the loss. For example, telling, little Johnny, oh, you're going to be a big brother. And then what, how do you explain to Johnny that there isn't a baby coming home?
Right,
And what does that look like?
right.
And then helping the child navigate through that. We talk about that. So um, I think grief is a lot more fluid than
Mhm.
you're going to be at this stage for this
Right.
36 weeks and then this one for 2 months. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Right,
It just doesn't.
right. And
It's a lot more fluid.
and I was sharing with a friend recently of someone that I lost, where it was one of those experiences. And I think if you've gone through grief, you can experience this where you think you've seen them
Mm,
after you've lost them. And I
mm,
remember experiencing that in the grocery store,
mm,
and how it puts your whole body in your chemistry into a
mm,
whole other place.
mm.
And it was really difficult to get through the grocery store
Mm.
because I was just having this
Yeah.
really intense, experience.
Mhm,
So once again, going back to what you're saying of having a group like this, having that information, those
mm,
are sort of like the saving graces of when that
mm.
happens, getting out where you can take care of yourself, reaching out for therapy, or the group of just knowing,
Yeah.
of talking about, hey, I just had this experience,
Yes.
and then not having to hold it because you feel like you're taking crazy pills.
Mhm,
Like, okay, so I know this person's not here, but in that instant, you feel as if,
mm,
I think I've heard parents say this when they wake up, it's excruciating because for a
mm,
second they forget.
mm.
And then it comes flooding in again, and you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
grieve again
Yeah.
and go
Relive it
through it.
in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you, as we're talking about this and we're saying how heavy it is, how do you help your people find hope again?
The biggest thing that, or the two biggest things that have been the most helpful, is changing the language of moving on to moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been the biggest thing. And the rituals, finding a way, for example, planting flowers or doing some gardening. That's a really big one for a lot of people.
Mm.
So people will plant some type of flower, or like I said, I have the ring, different things like that. People don't feel they can or they should.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so giving them the permission, yeah, you can.
Right. Right.
That's been a little bit more hopeful from what I've seen.
Wow.
Clients like, oh, I actually, so you're saying I can still carry them with me and it's okay. Oh
Right,
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And that giving them permission is so powerful because I think they just need to hear it from someone they
Yeah.
trust.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And it just flushes out the nonsense.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know the people who say these things that don't help. I know it's probably coming from a place of goodness and
Mhm.
love.
Yeah.
But it's also showing us where we're missing in our world,
Yeah.
that compassion, that gentleness. So you don't have to wish this away. You don't have to
Yeah.
force this away. You don't have to take away my pain.
Mhm.
Just love me and stand with me in the pain.
Right. Right. But there's a difference.
Absolutely.
But I think that just comes from people not knowing what to say, what to do, because they know they can't fix it. They know they can't take it away, things like that.
Right. And even as you're saying a few minutes ago, even in therapist, we can't take the pain away. We can't do that, but we can hold that space.
Mm-hmm.
We can give, and I find with grief, it isn't even about the literature. It's like you can just be raw right here. You don't have to do anything for me for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Someone can just hold you and let you be raw, angry, frustrated, confused, scared.
Mm-hmm.
And I find with grief that that work is so important
Yeah,
to be
definitely.
able to have that space. And then, as you're saying, knowing let's channel this into something productive and healing. And one of the techniques that I learned that some of the organizations do is with the loss of a baby, they can record the heartbeat
Mm-hmm.
and put it into like a teddy bear or something. Or there's these amazing inventions and creations out there of saying this is all real. It
Mm-hmm.
ended in trauma. It ended in tragedy, but our love is still real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this experience has changed us.
Yeah, definitely.
And then being able to look at, as you're saying too, when the partners don't know how to deal with it together.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Which is why we try and include the fathers as well.
Right.
Because again, that's another overlooked piece of it. Actually, it was my partner who kind of brought that to light. Like, hey, what about us? And I was like, let me add this in the group or in the support group really quick. And he was right. And that's why the group is open if fathers want to come. I haven't had that. There haven't been fathers that have come in, but definitely as the mothers, are talking about each week and, to their partners, they'll, have input, things like that.
Right. This is so exciting. You're doing such amazing, beautiful work.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is really exciting. I'm sure it sounds like you work in a facility in an area where they want this, they want the innovation, they want to grow, and it sounds like you have a really cool team.
Yeah. And the thing about that is, so Central Counseling Services is the group practice.
Okay.
And I think just being able to have that, have them support the creativity and have them support the groups that I've wanted to do is super important, because they know that it's needed.
Right.
It's definitely needed, and it's a matter of getting it to the people who need it.
Right. That's amazing. And how can people connect with you if they want to learn more about these great services?
So they can email me at Courtney@centralcounselingservices.net. I know it's a long one. Or they can call our office, and the number is 951-778-0230.
All right, wonderful. And then is your office on social media at all?
It is. And I
okay.
can figure out how, I don't know how that would work, but I can figure out how to include that. And we also have a nonprofit, and I can include that as well with our students, our master level students who are, learning, and they are supervised by a licensed therapist. So they're also taking this on as well.
That's me. And I wanted to ask that real quick, in your experiences as we're winding down tonight, is going back to what we're talking about with grad school, I don't know if I really had any conversation about grief or perinatal loss or trauma at all in grad school. Did you?
I had a grief class,
Okay.
maybe. Yeah, a grief class that, I mean, I don't really remember it, so I don't know how much it really did for me. It definitely wasn't powerful enough. I definitely remember some of my classes as being super powerful, one of them being my group classes. And grief definitely wasn't, especially not this type of loss. Absolutely not.
Right. And that's sad, and it's interesting, you know. So I loved my program, but and it's not to criticize it, but to bring the awareness of, you know, if educators are listening, to be able to say we have to incorporate these things because the clinicians need to know this. How to also, and not just clinicians, but think of how many people. I'm just thinking of when I've gone to a doctor's office, how many steps there are to getting to the provider, and how each person speaks to me, the language they use, how they look at me, if, you know, all of those things. And if I'm in pain, if I'm suffering, and those people aren't trained, if they're not trauma informed, if they're not compassionate, if they don't know how to treat someone with kindness and respect, it's going to affect my treatment, my healing, and my resiliency and being able to go back. Because if you go in and the front of the facility is harshness and judgment.
Absolutely. I will say that's something that I think the hardest phone call to make is the phone call to get the help.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful that our administrative staff, our front office staff get it and they make the experience easy as far as collecting the insurance. They get the referral, they're quick, all of those things. I've had a lot of clients say that was so easy as opposed to this was terrible, because they've gone places where, you know, when you want the help and it's hard to get the help and no one's helping you, it's discouraging. So I will say that I think that's something good about central counseling is making that phone call. That's the hardest part. That's it. Once you make that call, we get it taken care of, get you with the person you need to be with as far as therapist, and, you know, off your, you know, therapy journey goes.
Right. And now you're doing podcasts, that they will get to know you a little bit, which I never considered that doing a podcast would help people get to, like, it's just what I was like, I'm just going to do it, right? So they can see the wackiness that is Monette Counseling Services, in a place of love. But I think, you know, it helps that fear and that compassion of, wait a minute, this is, you know, I might be wacky, but I'm going to be genuine and consistent in who I am. And then, you know, when we're working together, whether it's coaching or groups or, you know, hold me tight, this is who you're getting.
Absolutely.
Now, as we wind down today, I always like to ask one last question.
Yes.
What is one piece of advice that you would like the audience to walk away from our conversation? Just something that you would like them to know.
I think, because we talked about so many different things on that's a hard question.
I don't know. I guess you're gonna have to come back, Courtney. I think we just confirmed that.
I'm definitely coming back. I think the biggest thing is don't be afraid to take that first step. That's just the teaser. There's so much more there.
I love how you just did that, like a cliffhanger.
That's that happily ever after cliffhanger I was talking about.
You'll have to come to my boot camp to get the answers. Like, I love it. I love it. Good marketing.
I like that.
Well, Courtney, thank you so much for coming to Friday Night Feels and spending time with me and us tonight. I hope it was a good experience for you joining the podcast.
Awesome. I loved this.
Awesome. And thank you to everyone that watches live and also the recordings on the YouTube channel and also all of the podcast platforms if you just like the audio version. And, you know, we always support we appreciate all of your support for Friday Night Feels. And we look forward to seeing you in the next 2 weeks. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone. Bye.